My daughter calls me every single evening at 9 p.m. sharp, and her first question is always the same. Is anyone there with you, Dad? If I tell her I'm by myself, she immediately ends the call. But last night, I decided to lie to her for the very first time. The phone's ring cut through the quiet of my study. I was in the leather armchair my wife, Clara, had always claimed for her evening reading, looking out at the vast Wyoming plains that stretched toward the distant mountains. The September wind whispered through the old pine trees she'd helped me plant 35 years ago, back when this land was just a desperate dream built on sweat and determination. "Hello, Chloe," I said, already knowing who it was. My daughter's routine was as unchangeable as the seasons. "Dad," her voice was strained, almost clinical. "Is anyone there with you?" I took a slow breath, my eyes scanning the living room where we'd raised our girl, where we'd shared so much joy and weathered so many struggles. The house felt cavernous and hollow without Clara's presence to fill it. "No, sweetheart," I lied. "I'm completely alone." The line went dead with a sharp click. No lecture about my security system. No worried questions. Just silence. A cold dread began to coil in my stomach. At 68, I'd learned to listen to my gut. And right now, it was screaming. The house groaned around me with its familiar nighttime sounds, which is why the soft rattle from the back porch stood out so starkly. I'd locked that door myself after dinner. I moved silently to the kitchen, grabbing the heavy flashlight from the counter. Peering out the window, the beam caught fresh, deep footprints in the soft earth near the steps. Too large to be mine. My pulse hammered in my ears as I checked the deadbolt. That's when I saw it. A plain manila envelope resting squarely in the middle of my kitchen table. I hadn't left it there. Inside was a single, faded photograph. It showed our ranch as it was decades ago, the old stable still standing proudly in the background. 4 people stood together, a younger me, my arm around a beaming Clara, and 2 people I had never seen before. A tall man in an immaculate suit had his hand on my arm in a gesture that felt more like a claim than a greeting. The woman beside him had eyes that seemed to look right through me. I turned the photo over. 7 words were scrawled on the back in an unfamiliar hand. The agreement. 1992. All accounts come due. 1992. The year we bought this property. The year Clara came home with a cashier's check for the down payment, saying a distant cousin had passed and left her everything. But Clara had no living cousins. Dawn arrived, gray and chilled, but I hadn't slept. The photograph lay on the table, those 7 words echoing in my mind. My coffee did little to steady my nerves. Who were those people? What agreement? And why surface now after all this time? The phone shattered the morning quiet at 8:30 exactly. "Mr. Walker?" The voice was unfamiliar, brisk, and professional. "This is Arthur Shaw. I'm an attorney in Cheyenne." I set my mug down, my senses on high alert. "I didn't contact a lawyer. No, sir." "You didn't, but I've been attempting to reach you for weeks." He paused, carefully choosing his words. "Your daughter has been blocking my communications." The world seemed to tilt. "What are you talking about?" "Chloe has been to my office twice this month. Mr. Walker, she's petitioning for emergency conservatorship. She claims you're showing significant cognitive decline, that you can no longer manage your own affairs." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank into Clara's chair at the nook where she'd always sat. "That's ridiculous." "I know you are," Arthur interrupted, "which is why I needed to speak with you directly. I represent a trust that holds documents pertaining to you and your late wife. Documents your daughter is extremely anxious to ensure you never see." My grip on the phone tightened. "What documents?" "The kind that explain the true origin of your ranch. The kind that would make you a rich man. And the kind that some people would murder to keep hidden." The photograph on the table seemed to pulse with a new, dark significance. "How do you know about 1992? Because the other principals are dead?" "Mr. Walker, a sailing accident off the coast of Florida 4 months ago. Far too convenient. In my opinion." I stood up so quickly my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You need to tell me what's happening. Not on this line." It's not secure, but you need to understand something immediately. Your daughter isn't working alone. Someone is coaching her, feeding her lies about your mental state. Someone who profits from your isolation. My mind flashed to Chloe's nightly calls. Her obsessive need to know if I was alone. Was she reporting my vulnerability to someone? Listen carefully, Arthur continued. Go to your wife's old desk. Look for anything she might have hidden. A key, a note, anything that seems out of place. And do it now. I was already moving toward the small office off the den, the phone pressed to my ear. Clara had kept it just as it was from her days, doing the books for the local grain elevator. Mr. Walker, are you there? I'm here. I pulled open the desk drawers, sifting through old papers and photographs. In the very back of the bottom drawer, tucked behind a stack of ledgers, my fingers closed around something cold and metallic. An old tarnished silver key. Taped to it was a tiny slip of paper with an address in Cheyenne I didn't recognize. I found something, I whispered. Good, now listen. Trust no one. Not even family. Especially not family. Can you meet me this afternoon? Through the kitchen window, I saw a cloud of dust rising from the long gravel driveway. A vehicle was approaching, moving far too fast. Mr. Walker? The engine's growl became distinct, terrifyingly familiar. It was Chloe's SUV. The sound of her engine sent a wave of ice through my body. I shoved the key deep into my jeans pocket and slammed the drawer shut just as heavy footsteps hit the front porch. Dad? Chloe's voice was coated with a false, bright concern I'd come to fear. You home? I barely had a moment to compose myself before she walked in. Her husband, Mark, trailing behind her like a vulture. His eyes immediately scanned the room, assessing, calculating. There you are. Chloe's smile was a tight, joyless line. We were so worried when you didn't pick up your phone. My phone never rang. The lie came out smoothly, but my heart was a drum against my ribs. Dad, we tried you 6 times. Mark's voice oozed with a practiced, syrupy worry. Chloe was so upset she wanted to drive out here in the middle of the night, last night, when Arthur had warned me about trusting them. Sit down, Dad. We need to talk. Chloe guided me to the kitchen table with a firm, insistent pressure. Mark and I have been discussing your situation as if I were a problem to be managed. We're concerned about your memory, Mark said, settling into Clara's chair as if it were his throne. Just yesterday you called Chloe, confused about the date, and last week you missed the mortgage payment. Dad? Please, Chloe's interruption was sharp. We saw the late notices. 3 of them, just piled on your desk. My mouth went dry. There were no late notices. I had never been late on a payment in 40 years. And then there's the sleepwalking, Mark continued, his fingers steepled under his chin. Nancy from down the road called us on Thursday. She said she found you on her property at 2 a.m., asking everyone if they'd seen Clara. The room swam. My vision blurred at the edges. That never happened. Dad, denial is a symptom. Chloe's voice was patronizing, the kind used for a confused child. Dr. Evans explained it all. This type of dementia often presents with, I do not have dementia. The words erupted from me, raw and loud. Mark flinched, but his expression hardened into something cold. You see, aggression? A textbook sign? They had a rebuttal for everything? Every defense was twisted into more proof of my incompetence. We found a wonderful facility for you, Chloe said, her tone softening into something even more sinister. Willow Creek in Cheyenne? It's very secure. They specialize in your condition. The words tasted like ash. I'm not going anywhere. Dad, you don't have a choice? Mark pulled out his phone. Dr. Evans is ready with the emergency guardianship paperwork. Chloe has medical power of attorney. The key in my pocket felt like a burning ember. Arthur's warning echoed in my mind. Especially not family. When did I sign that? My voice sounded distant, detached. Last Thanksgiving, Chloe said without a hint of hesitation. You were having one of your foggy spells. You probably don't recall. I remembered Thanksgiving with perfect clarity. Chloe and Mark had visited for 2 hours, complained about the drive, and left before pie. We had signed nothing. I want to see the documents. They're in the car, Mark said, standing up. Why don't we help you pack a bag while Chloe gets them? He was already moving toward the bedroom, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floors Clara had polished every week. This wasn't concern. This was an ambush. While they were distracted in the hallway, I slipped toward the back of the house. The pantry window was small, but fear made me agile. My hands shook as I worked the rusty latch. "Dad, where are you?" Chloe's voice had a new, sharp edge of panic. They had realized I was gone. The window protested with a loud squeak as I pushed it open. I squeezed through, thorns from Clara's prized climbing roses tearing at my jacket, and dropped onto the cold, damp ground below. A dark, unmarked car was idling at the end of my driveway, exhaust pluming in the chilly air. The passenger window slid down silently as I stumbled toward it. "Get in, now." The driver had a weathered, honest face and hands that looked like they'd known real work. As we pulled away, leaving Chloe and Mark shouting on my porch, I got a clear look at my rescuer. "Arthur Shaw," he said, offering a firm handshake. "We spoke this morning." Relief washed over me, leaving me trembling. "How did you know to come?" "I've been keeping an eye on your place since we talked. When I saw your daughter show up with company, I assumed you'd need a quick exit." His jaw was tight. "They moved faster than I anticipated." The adrenaline faded, leaving me weak. "They had court papers." Sighed, I signed over power of attorney at Thanksgiving. "Forgeries? Every one." Arthur's voice was low with anger. "This has been in the works for months. Someone's been poisoning your daughter against you, making her believe you're unstable." Arthur's office was in a quiet part of Cheyenne, a no-nonsense space filled with legal books and the smell of old paper. "Sit down, Ben," he said, gesturing to a worn chair. "We need to talk about Silas Vance." The name landed like a punch. "The man from the photograph." Arthur opened a thick file. "Vance was Clara's silent partner back in '92. Their consulting firm looked legitimate, but it was a front for something much darker." He slid a newspaper clipping toward me. "Prominent couple perish in yachting. Mishap." Below the headline were the faces of the two strangers from the photograph. "Robert and Diana Pierce," Arthur continued. "They died 4 months ago when their boat capsized in calm waters. Very convenient, given they'd started making inquiries about their old business arrangements." My throat was dry. "You think they were killed?" "I think they knew a secret that got them silenced. A secret about what truly happened in 1992. Arthur leaned forward, his expression grave. "That key you found opens a safety deposit box at Mountain West. Trust, Clara left it for you, with instructions to find me if she ever couldn't." An hour later, we stood in the bank's sterile vault. Box 312 was nondescript, but when Arthur used his key and I added Clara's, the door clicked open, revealing a slice of our hidden past. Inside were old floppy disks, a small, cloth-bound diary, and a letter sealed in a plastic bag. My hands trembled as I unfolded the familiar script. The first sentence stole my breath. "My dearest Ben, if you are reading this, then the lie I built for us has finally crumbled. The rest was a river of sorrow and regret." Speaking of records and proof that could ruin everything we had. She had hidden the complete truth somewhere else, a place only I would understand. Arthur slid a disk into his ancient laptop. Files flickered on the screen: bank statements, letters, more photos. Enough to suggest a vast crime, but not enough to prove it definitively in a courtroom. "She was clever," Arthur murmured, scrolling. "These are duplicates, pieces of the puzzle. The real evidence, the originals that could put someone away for life. They're still out there? Where?" "That's what Vance is desperate to find," Arthur said. "That's why he needs you out of the way. Ben, you're the last person who might know where." Clara hid the master copy. My phone vibrated. A number I didn't recognize. Arthur's eyes locked with mine. "Don't." But the ringing was insistent, a shrill demand in the quiet room. Against every screaming instinct, I answered. "Hello, Benjamin." The voice was like smooth bourbon. cultured and dripping with the confidence of old, untouchable wealth. "We need to have a conversation." Arthur reached for the phone, but I stopped him. After 30 years of shadows, I needed the truth. "Silas Vance, I assume. Very good. I see you've had a busy morning. Visiting banks, consulting with attorneys, digging up ghosts." His light laugh was the sound of ice breaking. Just like Clara, she could never let things lie. The vault walls seemed to close in. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, Benjamin. Order. The kind of quiet that only comes when troublesome history remains buried." He paused, and I could hear city sounds behind him. He was on the move. "Your wife was a financial genius, you know. Too sharp for her own good." Arthur was scribbling notes furiously, his face pale. "Back in 1992, Clara uncovered an operation she was never meant to see," Vance continued. $3.1 million moved through our firm in under 3 years. Money that needed to be cleansed, made pristine and legitimate. My legs felt weak. Clara, my principal Clara, had been involved in washing dirty money. Our dream ranch, our life, was purchased with it. She came to me with proof. Tapes, documents, enough to send me away for a very long time. But Clara was a pragmatist. She didn't want a courtroom drama. She wanted a future for her family. "So you made a deal," I said, my voice hollow. Her silence for our safety. This ranch, the funds to operate it, and a promise that her past would never resurface. But it didn't stay buried, did it? I managed. "No, Robert and Diana Pierce grew restless a few months back. Started asking uncomfortable questions, making threats about going to the authorities. They needed to be quieted." Arthur's pencil tip snapped. "Vance had just admitted to murder on an open line." "And Clara?" My voice cracked. "Cancer is such a vicious disease, Benjamin. So unpredictable. It can accelerate so suddenly, especially with the right catalysts." The floor seemed to drop away. Clara hadn't just died from cancer. She had been poisoned slowly and methodically over her final months. "You monster." The words were a choked whisper. Now, this is simply commerce." Clara was becoming nostalgic near the end, talking about unburdening her soul, making things right. I couldn't permit that. Vance's tone turned to steel. "Which brings us to you, Benjamin." The final unresolved thread. Arthur was already gathering the discs and papers. "We had to flee. Your daughter has been exceptionally cooperative," Vance continued. "So ready to believe her father was losing his grip. So willing to sign those commitment forms. Once you're comfortably tucked away at Willow Creek, I'll have all the leisure I need to search your land." "To search for what?" "The originals, Benjamin." Clara was too intelligent to keep everything in a bank box. She secreted the real proof somewhere on your property, a spot only you would consider. The discs you have are just shadows, worthless without the physical ledgers and tapes. My mind raced. Clara's hiding spot. She'd alluded to it in her letter. "The originals are still there, aren't they?" Vance's voice was a predator's purr. "Concealed somewhere significant, somewhere sacred to the two of you." Before I could respond, Arthur's phone buzzed. He answered tersely, his face draining of all color. "Ben," he whispered, covering the receiver. "It's your neighbor, Jim. He says your ranch is on fire." "The fire department is responding." Vance's laughter slithered through my phone. "The clock is ticking." Benjamin, the drive back to the ranch was a race against a ticking clock. Arthur's knuckles were bone white on the steering wheel as we sped through the Wyoming darkness, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. When we topped the final ridge, the sight nearly stopped my heart for good. My home was being consumed. Hungry orange flames licked at the kitchen where Clara had cooked our meals for decades. Thick black smoke poured from her office, the room that held every record of our life together. "She's erasing me," I breathed, watching Mark move through the inferno with a canister. Not to fight the fire, but to feed it. "Park behind the old bunkhouse," I commanded, my voice rough with smoke and fury. We approached from the rear, using the cover of the scrubland. Arthur cut the engine, his hands shaking. "I've alerted the state police and the FBI, they're 15 minutes. Out, 15 minutes. My entire life could be ash in 15 minutes. We moved through the tall, dry grass like ghosts, the smell of burning wood and memories choking us. My whole body was a live wire of terror and rage. The ancient willow tree stood ahead, its long, sweeping branches a stark silhouette against the hellish glow. It was Clara's favorite spot, where she'd sit and sketch for hours. Her laughter carried on the breeze when I'd join her. Our special place, I whispered, dropping to my knees at the massive, gnarled roots. My hands shook so violently, I could barely take the small trenching tool Arthur passed me. The soil gave way easily, softened by time and recent irrigation. About 2 feet down, the metal blade struck something solid with a dull clang. A metal lockbox. Clara's handwriting was etched on a small plaque on the lid. For Ben, the whole story, my vision blurred with tears. I could no longer hold back as I fumbled with the combination lock. The numbers our anniversary. Inside were the real documents. Original ledgers detailing every illicit transaction. Mini cassette tapes of incriminating conversations. Photographs that could send powerful men to prison for the rest of their days. My God, Arthur breathed, his voice full of awe and fear. She recorded everything. The roar of powerful engines tore through the night. Headlights swept across the pasture, 2 black SUVs speeding toward us with lethal intent. We have to go, I said. But Arthur was already shoving the evidence back into the box, his movements frantic. The lead vehicle skidded to a halt, its high beams pinning us in a circle of blinding light. Silas Vance stepped out, impeccably dressed, his face a mask of cold triumph. Behind the wheel sat Chloe, my little girl, now chauffeuring the man who had killed her mother. Step away from the box, Benjamin. Vance's voice was a whip crack in the night. You've been an inconvenience long enough. I stood on unsteady legs, clutching Clara's final confession to my chest. 3 decades of deception, all contained in a metal box that felt lighter than air. It's over, Vance. The authorities are coming. Arthur has your confession. Vance smiled. A chilling sight, and the air grew colder. I'm afraid they won't arrive in time to save you. The pistol appeared, in his hand as if from nowhere. Polished steel aimed directly at me. Chloe scrambled out of the truck, her face a pale moon of confusion and horror. Mr. Vance, you promised. You said we were just going to talk to him. You said, plans evolved, my dear. Vance's finger found the trigger. Your father has proven to be far more resourceful than we budgeted for. The gun's barrel was a dark O, a void waiting to end my story. Vance held it with the ease of a man intimately familiar with violence. Do you want to know the real reason Clara had to die, Benjamin? Vance's words carried across the smoky distance. She grew a conscience in her final years. Began speaking of confession, of seeking absolution before she faced her judgment. My chest ached. Even dying, Clara had fought for redemption. I couldn't allow that, Vance continued, his gaze unwavering. So I helped her illness along. Remarkable what certain undetectable compounds can do over time. The doctors were utterly baffled. Chloe's face crumpled. You killed my mother. Business, my dear, merely business. Vance didn't even look at her. Your father's wife was a liability, just as he is now, but you told me. Chloe's voice broke. You told me he was sick. You had the doctor's reports? I told you what was necessary to secure your cooperation. Vance's smile was frigid. You were so desperate to believe your father was failing, so eager to sign those papers. You made my task remarkably simple. The full, ugly truth crashed down on Chloe, her shoulders slumped, and she gripped the truck's hood for support. Oh God, what have I done? You've assisted in tidying a very old, very messy affair, Vance said dismissively. Nothing more. I looked at my daughter, truly looked at her, and saw the little girl I taught to ride, to be brave, to be good. That girl was still there, drowning in a sea of betrayal and manipulation. Chloe, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the chaos. Look at me. Her tear-filled eyes met mine, wide with shame and terror. The person you are right now is the only one that matters, I said. Choose right here. Be the woman your mother raised, or be his instrument forever. Vance's laugh was a harsh, ugly sound. Touching, but I'm afraid this family reunion is the distant, rising wail of sirens cut him off. Multiple cars approaching fast from the direction of town. Vance cursed, his perfect composure fracturing. They're early. Chloe straightened. Something in her face shifted, the confusion burning away to reveal a core of hardened steel. You lied to me, she said, her voice gaining a new, solid strength. About everything. Does it matter now? Vance swung the gun back toward me, his finger tightening on the trigger. This ends now, then Chloe moved. In one fluid motion, she stepped directly into the line of fire, placing herself between the gun and my heart. My world stopped. No. The scream was torn from my throat. Vance's eyes widened in shock. Get out of the way, you foolish girl! I won't let you hurt him. Chloe's voice was steady, but I could see her whole body trembling. Not anymore. The gun was now aimed at my daughter's chest. Move, or I'll put a bullet through you, too. Then shoot me. Chloe took another step closer to the muzzle. Closer to death? But you'll have to kill me to get to my father. Time seemed to hang suspended. My daughter, who I believed had betrayed me, was now shielding me with her own life, ready to die for the man she had tried to have institutionalized. Chloe, please, I begged. Don't. She turned her head just enough to meet my gaze. I love you, Dad. Forgive me. The sirens were deafening now. Maybe 60 seconds away. Vance's face was a twisted mask of fury and desperation. You sentimental idiot. Put the gun down, Chloe commanded. Her eyes locked on him. It's finished. Sheriff's Department. A voice boomed through a megaphone from the darkness. Drop your weapons. You are surrounded. The night exploded with red and blue lights as police cruisers and a dark FBI sedan crested the hill surrounding the pasture. Vance looked from the closing circle of law enforcement too. Chloe's unwavering stance to me. The calculation in his eyes finally found a set of odds he couldn't beat. This isn't over, he snarled, but the gun in his hand was now shaking. Yes, I said, my heart swelling with a painful, soaring pride as I watched my daughter stand her ground. It is. Winter sunlight, bright and clean, streamed through the new windows of my rebuilt home, warming floors that no longer held the ghosts of smoke and treachery. 4 months had passed since that night under the willow tree. 4 months since my old life burned to the ground and a new one began, fragile but hopeful. I stood in what was once Clara's office, now a bright sunroom, her photos smiling down from the shelf. The legal war was finally over. Silas Vance was sentenced to life without parole for multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, and more. The evidence Clara buried was more than enough to shatter his empire. Mark received a 10-year sentence for arson and acting as an accessory. His defense that he was just following his wife's lead fell apart under the weight of his own eager actions. Chloe was granted full immunity. Her cooperation with the FBI and her ultimate brave choice in the pasture saved her from prosecution. The district attorney decided that being Vance's pawn was punishment enough, considering she nearly died defying him. The restitution from the Pierce estate was substantial. $4.8 million. The remainder of the dirty money Clara had helped launder. I kept enough to restore the ranch and ensure my comfort, but the majority is funding something Clara would have loved. A new community center for families of fallen first responders. The sound of construction drew me to the window. Chloe was helping frame the new barn, her hands, now calloused and strong, working alongside the crew. She'd moved back to the ranch after the divorce, staying in the guest cabin while we slowly, carefully, learned how to be father and daughter again. Dad, she appeared in the doorway, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. The builders need the final blueprints for the community center. Annex, the center, our shared project, funded by Clara's legacy. A place for healing and support, the kind of good our town had needed for years. On the desk. Tell them to start whenever they're ready. She nodded but hesitated, lingering. Our conversations were still careful, still mindful of the chasm we were bridging. Trust once shattered mends slowly. Dad, she struggled, searching for the right words. I know I can't ever take back what I did. The papers, the lies, almost getting you killed. I put down my coffee and looked at her. Really looked. She had aged in these months, the weight of her guilt carving new lines on her face. You made a choice that night, I said softly. When it was all on the line, when your life was the price, you chose to protect me. That's the memory I hold on to. But before that, you were manipulated by a professional predator, Chloe. Vance spent decades destroying families. You were not his first victim. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Mom would be so ashamed of me. Your mother would be proud of the woman who stepped in front of a gun for her father. The woman who has spent every day since rebuilding what was broken. I walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. This takes time, kid. But we have time. Her phone buzzed a text from the foreman. As she read it, I was reminded of those terrifying nightly calls. But now, when Chloe calls, it's not to check on my isolation. It's to ask about my day, to share a small victory, to slowly, painstakingly rebuild the bond that was almost destroyed. The support group wants to tour the finished wing next week, she said, looking up. Will we be ready? We'll be ready, I smiled, feeling a genuine sense of peace for the first time in years. Hope, it turned out, was a powerful foundation. We've got nothing but time now, as Chloe headed back to work. I thought of the long, dark road that led us here. From that first deceptive phone call to this moment of quiet reconciliation. Clara's secrets had almost been our ruin. But in the end, they also gave us a chance at redemption. The phone rang. Not the landline of old nightmares, but my cell. Chloe's name glowed on the screen. Just checking in, Dad. Her voice was warm when I answered. Making sure you're doing okay. I'm not alone, I said, looking out at the ranch where new structures were rising from the ashes of old lies. Not anymore. Sometimes the most difficult trials are delivered by the people we love the most. As I sit here in my restored home, watching winter's grip loosen on our Wyoming land, I've learned that family isn't defined by perfection. It's defined by the choices we make when everything falls apart. Life has a way of testing us through those closest to our hearts. When Chloe stood against me, I thought I'd lost my daughter forever. But sometimes our darkest hours are used to reveal our true character. The same daughter who nearly broke me became the one who saved my life. These stories we tell aren't just for passing the time. They're reminders that no matter how far we fall, redemption is always within reach. This true story taught me that forgiveness isn't a sign of weakness. It's the strongest gift a parent can give a child. Clara's deceptions could have buried us all, but instead, they became the ground from which something better could grow. Trust is rebuilt one day at a time, but love, real love, can survive anything. When life allows families to be torn apart, it also provides the grace needed to mend what seems shattered beyond repair. Chloe calls me every night now, not to see if I'm alone, but to remind me that I never have to be again. This true story is proof that even the deepest betrayals can lead to the greatest blessings. And the stories we choose to tell, they become the legacy we leave behind. Not tales of perfect families, but stories of forgiven ones. Life is too short to hold on to anger against the people who matter most. Sometimes the greatest act of love we can offer our children is the chance to become better than their worst mistakes. What would you do if your family turned against you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to Wines of Thought for more tales of redemption and hope.